Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we'll be talking about essential thrombocythemia. So this is a blood disorder where the platelet count increases to more than 450,000 per microliter of blood, and it's a type of myeloproliferative neoplasm which can progress to post-ET myelofibrosis, or it can transform to an MPN blast phase. Also, this can sometimes interchange and convert into polycythemia vera or even another MPN, which is CML. So before we dive right into essential thrombocythemia, I would like to discuss what thrombocytosis can be. So it can be either due to primary causes or secondary causes. Primary cause is what I've described, which is the MPN ET. It can also happen in a familial manner, where you can have patients presenting with hereditary or familial thrombocytosis, and this passes on from one generation to the next. But the more common variety that we see in clinical practice is secondary thrombocytosis, and this is usually reactive in nature. So, what do we mean by this? So, this means that there's an underlying cause which causes the platelet count to rise, and the most common reasons are due to iron deficiency anemia. This is very common that you'll see in iron deficiency anemia patients. Infection can also cause a transient rise in platelet count. Inflammation, surgeries, especially post splenectomy, where the platelet count can rise. Trauma, tissue injury, and malignancy can also cause a rise in the circulating platelets. Usually, the count does not exceed 2 million, but sometimes it can exceed 2 million, and this is not a very definitive criteria. But it is quite uncommon for the counts to go above 2 million in secondary thrombocytosis. So, another very important point to bring up here is you can see elevated platelet counts in polycythemia vera, in primary myelofibrosis, and CML. So it's very important to exclude these other types of MPN before labeling the disorder as essential thrombocythemia, because the management is going to be very different from each of these conditions. So coming to the diagnostic criteria, so the current diagnostic criteria which is used is the WHO 2016 diagnostic criteria, and it's got both major and minor criteria. So the major criteria has 4 points. The first being that there has to be a sustained platelet count more than 450,000 per microliter. The second point being bone marrow biopsy should show proliferation of mainly megakaryocytes, which are the precursor cells which gives rise to the platelets, and these cells tend to be more mature in nature, and you will not see the other cell lines being affected, like the granulocyte line or even the erythrocyte line. And there should be no fibrosis involved, because if you have fibrosis, then it's more likely to be a diagnosis of primary myelofibrosis, and if the any other cell lines are involved, it could be a different variety of MPN. Another criteria that we look at is it should not meet criteria for the other types of MPN, which is polycythemia vera, primary myelofibrosis, CML, MDS, or other myeloid neoplasms. And another important criteria that we look at is the presence for a mutation, which can be JAK2V617F, a CALR, or MPL mutation. The presence of any one of these mutations is part of the major criteria. And the minor criteria that we usually look for is the presence of a clonal marker or exclusion of reactive thrombocytosis. So to diagnose ET, essentially you need all 4 major criteria, or you need the first 3 major and the minor criteria. So what does this condition look like, and how does it present? So the main clinical feature that we see is vascular events, and by this we mean both arterial and venous thrombosis. So you can have thrombosis in unusual locations like the abdominal veins. You can have thrombosis in the cerebral veins. You can have arterial thrombosis as well. So if you tend to have more abnormal locations for your clotting events, this is something that should be in your differential diagnosis, and it's one of the tests that we usually look for is we carry out the MPN panel to look for the mutations that I just mentioned above. Another clinical feature that you can see in this condition is bleeding. Usually when the platelet count exceeds 1.5 million per cubic milliliter of blood, that's when you tend to have bleeding manifestations, and this usually occurs due to the development of acquired von Willebrand disease. And there are a couple of factors that puts the patient at an increased risk for developing the vascular events. So usually patients who are older and who have a prior thrombosis event, and those with cardiovascular risk factors like smoking, hypertension, diabetes mellitus, and hyperlipidemia usually increases their risk for developing a clot. And also, lower rates of thrombosis is seen in patients with a CALR mutation when compared to patients who present with a JAK2 mutation. So, the disease can progress to post-ET myelofibrosis or to an MPN blast phase. So, this is how the disease usually progresses, and it takes a number of years for the patient to progress to these two disease states. In case of myelofibrosis, one's index of suspicion increases when the patient has a new or a progressive splenomegaly, or they develop new onset anemia, increase in LDH, or you can find peripheral smear or bone marrow changes. For example, you can have increase in fibrosis when you perform a bone marrow biopsy. So coming to the management, usually treatment is provided to patients who are at a higher risk of developing thrombosis. So the one way of managing this condition is by putting the patient on an antiplatelet agent like aspirin, and this is usually started in patients who have cardiovascular risk factors. But prior to starting aspirin, it's very important to rule out acquired von Willebrand disease, because these patients can tend to have bleeding episodes. So it's very important to rule out this before initiating the antiplatelet therapy. Another modality of treatment is cytoreduction, where you try to reduce the number of circulating platelets in the body. And this is usually targeted for patients who are at a higher risk or who have uncontrolled symptoms. So the medications that are generally used include hydroxyurea, anagrelide, and interferons. Another option is JAK2 inhibition for patients with a positive JAK2 mutation. So one such drug is ruxolitinib. It's been studied in patients who have presented with hydroxyurea failure. However, the clinical trial, which was the MAGIC ET trial, did not really recommend it for use in ET patients yet. Another very important part of clinical management is anticoagulation for venous events. So the type of anticoagulation that needs to be used and the duration is not very clear. So one should decide based on individual patient factors, based on their history and other comorbidities, and decide on the duration of anticoagulation that is required for these patients. However, indefinite anticoagulation will be required for patients with abdominal vein or recurrent thrombosis. Alright, so that's it for today. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it's been helpful. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.